Time now for Inside Out, presented by Geico, as Andy Martino joins us. And Andy, you've been downplaying the Epstein speculation for a little while now, but why was there, despite the meeting between Theo Epstein and Steve Cohen, mutual disinterest in having Epstein run the Mets?
Well, I mean, from Epstein's standpoint, what I've heard all along is that he's more interested in being part of an ownership group, maybe building an organization from the ground up. If he gets back into that side of things, he seems to be happy with what he's doing with MLB. So I just, in talking to people around him over the past couple of weeks and months, I just didn't sense an eagerness to jump at something just because something came up. So that was a Theo side. And from the Mets side, there just was never as much heat around his name over there as there was around, say, Billy Beane, or even though David Stearns from Milwaukee is not someone they're likely to get, even he seemed like they were more interested in that. It's hard to say exactly why it didn't gel that way or why it wasn't going to gel, but it was always like an arranged media marriage where the actual parties involved were not as interested as some in the public were trying to make it feel or seem.
You got to love those arranged media marriages. So much fun to talk about. Andy, now to the current roster and some candid comments from Met players to ESPN about, among other things, the need for a leader in the clubhouse. You know this group very well, so how surprising is it that despite the core being together for a little while now, there's an apparent lack of leadership in the Mets clubhouse?
Not surprising at all. I mean, we've seen so many examples of the Mets seeming to feel that they're more amusing or interesting or successful than they've actually been on the field. I mean, everything from the fake hitting coach to the raccoon to the thumbs down. I mean, that was just this year. I think it's been pretty clear that, who's done a great job talking about this is Keith Hernandez on the broadcast in his own kind of gentle way of saying this team isn't exactly acting with the professionalism that would indicate that they have not even a Keith Hernandez, but a David Wright in there, someone who's more contemporary. It speaks to what Francisco Lindor perhaps was not able to provide in his first year. Lindor is someone who'd been name-checked as a leader and wanted to present himself as a leader. And some felt that he was that, but clearly overall, not someone who had that veteran presence who could unify everybody. And the Mets are still looking for that. They've had changes at the top, at the GM position. They've had many, many changes of managers since Terry Collins, a long run. And just lacking that guy in the clubhouse to be that David Wright since Wright was here. So we've watched this team and we've seen them behave in ways that have been unappealing. So it's nice that they finally admitted it. And good on the writer, Devin Gordon, for getting them to.
Certainly be interesting to see how the new president of baseball operations goes about changing that. Andy Martino, thanks for joining us here on Geico Sports Night.
Thanks, Eamon.
Let's keep the conversation going with Homeschooled as Marc Malusis and Sal Licata join us. And first, Sal, what was your reaction to the on-the-record quotes from several prominent Met players?
To me, it was an indictment of Francisco Lindor. I mean, I thought that's what he was doing. We know he wasn't hitting this year, but all we heard was, oh, this clubhouse. That was the strength for years. Oh, this clubhouse is so great. They don't want to bring in anybody who might mess up the chemistry. Lindor's a leader. He gave you good defense. He's giving you leadership, even though he's not hitting. And now you have one by one coming out saying, well, nobody told us what to do. Nobody held us accountable. Number one, they needed a real manager. Number two, the guy that they thought was the leader apparently is not a leader. Number three, it proves the point that what we were watching was a bunch of immature individuals, not real professional major league players partake in the major league season this year. That is something we assumed from afar, and now we have confirmation that to a man, they're not ready to be big leaguers if they're acting like that, and they need somebody to show them the way when to really turn it up a notch. So really, it's an indictment of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's lame. I got to be honest with you. I mean, I think the stuff from Conforto is actually refreshing. They didn't win enough. I mean, how many times you hear from the Mets that, it was a good culture, it was a good clubhouse. Now all of a sudden, Jeff McNeil, is that the reason why you couldn't hit yourself out of a brown paper bag this past year? Because they didn't have anybody going out there? How about Loop going out there? Oh, you need some guy to go out there, a guy that's stepping up to the podium, with a can of beer after he has a successful outing. That's the guy that all of a sudden needs somebody to go tell him, you know what, now it's time to go. You're a baseball player. You are a paid professional athlete. So you mean to tell me that you need somebody else in that clubhouse on a day in, day out basis to act professionally, to go about doing your job properly, to have the understanding of what it means to be a professional? You're getting paid to play a kid's game. right? So now it's all of a sudden, it's a convenient excuse, right? So you want to throw Lindor under the bus, that's fine. You can throw Baez under the bus with the thumbs down stuff. I mean, everyone's rolling over Luis Rojas basically like a locomotive. So you can now throw Luis Rojas under the bus. So now we're looking at a scenario where you have all these people coming free and saying, well, you know what? We underperformed. It's not from a lack of talent. Sure it is. No. It's because we weren't led properly. It's complete and utter nonsense. The lack of professionalism comes with the lack of the talent of the individuals, which we have clearly overrated here when you've looked at this roster for years.
I mean, clearly, guys, you're both right. There's a talent issue. There's also a dysfunction issue here because, you know, when this team is rolling, it appears great chemistry. They walk off wins. Everyone's tearing shirts off. But when the going gets tough, where do they go to? Certainly the last 2 years, this is a team that has faded down the stretch, and that was obviously apparent in 2020, in 2021, and the chemistry needs to change.